The first time I heard his voice, I wanted to laugh or shoot him. No one with that much calm in their tone could possibly be innocent. The Bureau had handed me the case like it was a gift-wrapped nightmare. Investigate the cult in Redwood Valley, Agent Ethan Cole. People go missing, whispers of rituals. Find the truth. I thought it was another backwoods conspiracy I'd debunk, write a report, and move on. But nothing about Adrian Hale, the man they called their leader, was what I expected. The drive to Redwood Valley felt like being pulled into another world. The farther I went, the thinner the road became, until I was cutting through forests so dense the sunlight barely touched the asphalt. The air smelled of pine and wet soil, and every so often, I caught glimpses of strangers walking along the tree line, barefoot in white linen, their eyes blank yet oddly serene. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. When I arrived at the old church that served as their sanctuary, I was met with silence. It wasn't empty, though. I could feel them watching me from the shadows, like ghosts tethered to the peeling wood and cracked windows. And then he appeared. Adrian Hale stepped out from the doorway as if he'd been waiting all along. Sunlight caught in his dark blonde hair, his pale skin almost glowing against the loose white shirt he wore. But it was his eyes that made me freeze, gray, sharp as glass, but filled with something deeper, something that made me want to look away and stare longer at the same time. "You must be Agent Cole," he said softly, like we were old acquaintances. And I hated the way my chest tightened at the sound of his voice. I reminded myself who he was: a cult leader, charismatic, manipulative, dangerous. But as he extended his hand, I shook it, because walking away wasn't an option. The days bled together in Redwood Valley. I interviewed members who spoke in riddles, half-truths dripping from their lips like honey laced with poison. They claimed Adrian had saved them, given them freedom. I found traces of missing persons, photographs, belongings tucked away in storage rooms, but nothing that tied Adrian directly. What unnerved me most was Adrian himself. He didn't avoid me like I expected. In fact, he sought me out. He asked questions about my life, my work, the city I came from. When I pressed him about the missing people, he smiled, as if I were the one being tested. "You see cages where others see sanctuary," he told me one evening as we stood outside the church. Fireflies floated in the humid night air, and his voice was low, intimate. "Why is that, Agent?" "Because freedom doesn't look like this," I snapped back, though my pulse betrayed me. He stepped closer. "Then what does it look like?" I should have walked away. I should have reminded myself he was the enemy. But standing there, with the faint scent of cedar clinging to his clothes, I couldn't answer. The hook sank deeper with every encounter. Adrian was contradictions woven into flesh. Cold and warm, dangerous yet tender. His words cutting but his gaze softening whenever it lingered on me. It infuriated me, terrified me, and against every ounce of training I had, it began to draw me in. The turning point came on the third week. I'd found evidence, blood-stained robes buried near the riverbank. It was enough to bring him in, enough to end the nightmare. But when I confronted Adrian, he didn't fight, didn't run. Instead, he whispered, "If you take me away, Ethan, you'll never know the truth." And damn him, he was right, because in his eyes, I didn't see guilt. I saw something else, something that looked far too much like love. That night, I dreamed of him, his hand brushing against mine, his lips whispering my name like a prayer. I woke up drenched in sweat, furious at myself. This was exactly how people like him worked. Luring, seducing, blurring the lines. But when dawn came, I found myself walking back to the church. And when he saw me, Adrian smiled as if he knew I would. "You're not here to arrest me," he murmured. And I hated that he was right. The deeper I went, the harder it became to tell where the case ended and I began. Adrian showed me his world, Rituals that weren't violent, people who weren't prisoners but believers. He claimed he wanted no power, only connection. And yet, shadows still clung to everything. People were still gone. Evidence still pointed to him. But every time I looked at Adrian, I saw the man who stayed up late with me by the fire, listening to my stories, laughing at my sarcasm. I saw the way his hand brushed mine when he poured me tea, the way he looked at me like he already knew every secret I carried. And I saw the truth I didn't want to admit. I was falling. Falling for the one man I should have destroyed. Ethan Cole, FBI agent, sworn to justice. Adrian Hale, cult leader, sworn to secrecy. And between us, something neither law nor faith could explain. And that's when the real danger began. The first crack in my resolve came the night of the storm. The rain hammered against the old church like it wanted to tear the walls down, lightning splitting the sky into jagged shards of white. I'd been working late, sifting through files and half-burnt documents I'd pulled from one of the outbuildings. Evidence, I told myself. I needed proof. But the roof began to leak, the storm breaking through the ancient wood, and before I could move, Adrian appeared. He carried a lantern, the glow painting his features in gold and shadow. "You'll drown in here if you keep sitting like that," he said, setting the lantern down beside me. "I don't need your concern," I muttered, though my body betrayed me with the shiver that ran down my spine. Adrian crouched, his hand brushing over my wet sleeve, fingers light as if testing whether I was real. "You say that, but you've stayed." His words cut deeper than I wanted to admit. I had stayed. Long after protocol said I should have called for backup. Long after I should have left this valley and written my report. And the only reason was him. Later, when the storm forced us to shelter in the basement, the closeness became unbearable. The lantern flickered between us, throwing his profile into sharp lines and soft shadows. The smell of rain-damp wood and his faint cologne filled the room. "You should sleep," he murmured, settling across from me. "I don't sleep well in places like this." "Because you don't trust me?" "Because I don't trust myself," I snapped. The silence that followed was heavy, almost suffocating. Then he leaned forward, voice low, almost breaking. "Do you think I want this?" I frowned. "Want what?" "This pull between us. You think I asked for it? You think I wanted the one man who came here to destroy me to be the one who makes my heart restless?" His confession knocked the air from my lungs. For the first time, I saw cracks in his composure, a vulnerability that matched my own. And when the storm finally quieted, neither of us moved closer, but the space between us had already changed forever. The next day, I found myself watching him more closely, the way his hand lingered on the shoulders of his followers, not in dominance but reassurance. The way he spoke in circles, yes, but with a strange sincerity I couldn't categorize. He wasn't what I'd been taught to expect. He wasn't Charles Manson or David Koresh. He wasn't mad. And yet, people were still gone. When I confronted him again, my voice was harsher than I intended. "Tell me where they are. The missing people. Tell me, Adrian." He studied me, gray eyes unreadable. "If I tell you everything, you won't believe me. Try me." They left because the world outside devoured them. They came to me broken, and I gave them sanctuary. Some stayed. Some walked into the forest and never returned. I don't hold them. I don't keep them. But I don't chase them either. It wasn't enough. Couldn't be. But when he said it, I wanted to believe him. That evening, he invited me to one of their gatherings. Against every fiber of my being, I went. The chapel glowed with candlelight, the scent of burning sage curling in the air. Men and women sat in a circle, their voices rising in unison. Not a chant of madness, but something hauntingly beautiful, almost like a hymn. Adrian stood at the center, his eyes finding mine through the haze of smoke. He didn't speak to the group. He spoke to me. "Freedom is not the absence of chains," he said, his voice carrying. "It is the courage to walk unafraid, even when the world calls you lost." And God help me, my chest ached, because in that moment, I wasn't looking at a cult leader. I was looking at a man who believed, truly believed, in something greater. And I wondered what it would be like to believe in him, too. But the Bureau doesn't care about belief. The Bureau cares about facts. So when my handler called me one night, asking for an update, I lied. No solid evidence yet. Still gathering information. The silence on the other end was sharp. "Cole, your report is overdue. We need something concrete. If you're compromised." "I'm not compromised." I cut in quickly, though the words tasted like ash. After the call, I found Adrian waiting in the doorway. He didn't ask who it was. He didn't need to. "You're being pulled in two directions," he said quietly. "Duty and desire. Which one will win?" I swallowed hard, unable to answer, because the truth was I didn't know. The breaking point came 2 nights later. I'd found a hidden journal, tucked away in a locked drawer inside Adrian's quarters. It was filled with names, dates, cryptic notes about rituals and gatherings. It looked damning. It looked like exactly what the Bureau needed. But before I could take it, Adrian appeared behind me. "Looking for something, Agent?" His voice wasn't angry. It was soft, almost hurt. I turned, the journal heavy in my hand. "You kept this from me. And you broke into my room." The tension was unbearable. My pulse roared in my ears. "Ethan," he whispered, stepping closer. "Do you even know why you're still here?" I wanted to deny it. I wanted to shove him away, slap the cuffs on his wrists, and end it all. But instead, I found myself caught in his gaze, the journal slipping from my grip. "Because of you," I admitted, my voice breaking. "God help me, Adrian. Because of you." His hand cupped my jaw, trembling slightly. "Then stop fighting it." And when his lips finally touched mine, it wasn't fire or destruction. It was quiet, gentle, a surrender I didn't know I was capable of. For the first time, I let myself fall. But falling in love with Adrian Hale was like stepping into quicksand. The more I gave in, the deeper I sank. Days blurred together in stolen moments. His hand brushing mine during breakfast, laughter echoing between us during late-night walks, the kind of intimacy that felt both terrifying and inevitable. And yet, every time I woke, the same truth lingered. I was still an agent. He was still my target. The world outside would never understand this. The Bureau would crucify me. Society would label me a traitor, a fool, a man seduced by madness. But when Adrian looked at me, none of that mattered. For once in my life, I wasn't just Agent Ethan Cole. I was someone he saw, someone he wanted. And maybe, for the first time, I wanted to be that man, too. Still, shadows crept in. One night, a follower came running into the church, screaming. A body had been found in the woods, half-buried, unrecognizable. The air filled with panic. Fingers pointed at Adrian. Whispers grew louder. And suddenly, the choice I'd been avoiding landed at my feet. Duty or desire? Justice or love? Adrian's life or mine? And this time, there would be no middle ground. The body in the woods was the spark that lit the wildfire. By morning, Redwood Valley was no longer a quiet enclave wrapped in fog and secrets. Police cars lined the dirt roads, their flashing lights cutting through the mist. Locals whispered at the edge of the forest. Reporters began circling like vultures, hungry for any glimpse of the cult leader who'd been the subject of rumors for years. And me? I stood in the middle of it all, my badge burning a hole in my pocket, while my heart was chained to the man everyone wanted to condemn. The sheriff, a heavy-set man with tired eyes, approached me. "Agent Cole, the body was badly decomposed, but initial forensics suggest foul play. People are saying Hale's behind it." I clenched my jaw. "Rumors don't make evidence." The sheriff gave me a sharp look. "Careful, Agent. Don't let him get into your head. That's what he does." I wanted to say it was already too late. That night, the church felt different. The followers, usually calm and obedient, were restless. Fear rippled through the air, whispers echoing in the wooden halls. Some looked at Adrian with doubt, others with desperate devotion, as if clinging harder would shield them from the storm outside. Adrian himself remained composed, almost unnervingly so. When he saw me enter, his lips curved into the faintest smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "They think I killed that man," he said softly. I closed the door behind me, my pulse pounding. "Did you?" His gaze locked on mine, steady, unflinching. "No. God help me, I believed him." "Then prove it," I demanded. "Tell me everything. Show me what you're hiding." For the first time, a flicker of uncertainty crossed his face. He stepped closer, his voice low enough that only I could hear. "If I show you, Ethan, you'll have to choose. Between the Bureau and me. Between the life you knew and the life you've already stepped into." "Then show me," I whispered back, though fear coiled in my stomach. He led me deep into the woods that night, past the worn paths I'd already memorized. The air was cold, damp with moss and rain-soaked earth. We walked in silence, only the crunch of leaves beneath our boots filling the night. At last we came to a clearing. Moonlight spilled over a small cabin, hidden so well it might have been swallowed whole by the forest. Adrian unlocked the door with a key that hung around his neck. Inside, the air smelled of cedar and old paper. Shelves lined the walls, filled with journals, letters, photographs. It wasn't a shrine. It was an archive. "These are the ones who left," Adrian said quietly. He ran his hand along the spines of the journals. "Their stories, their fears, their reasons for coming here. I keep them because I want to remember, not because I keep them prisoner." I pulled out one of the books and flipped through it. Handwritten pages. Memories of a woman who'd escaped an abusive marriage. Notes about the peace she'd found here. Drawings of the valley. Another journal belonged to a boy barely 18, kicked out by his family for being gay. His words trembled with pain, then bloomed with hope as he wrote about Adrian's kindness. My throat tightened. This wasn't evidence of a killer. It was evidence of a sanctuary. But then I found another journal. The last pages ended abruptly. No farewell, no explanation. Just a smear of ink trailing off the page. "Where are they now?" I asked, voice hoarse. Adrian's shoulders sagged. "Some vanished into the forest. Some I don't know. I couldn't save everyone. It wasn't enough to clear him, but it was enough to fracture me further." The next morning, I was summoned back to town. The bureau had arrived, my bureau. Suits, stern faces, and sharp questions. My handler, Agent Daniels, pulled me aside. "Cole, we've given you weeks. Now we have a body, media frenzy, public pressure. Headquarters wants this wrapped up. Hale comes in, no exceptions." I swallowed hard. "You don't understand. He's not what they think." Daniel's eyes narrowed. "Are you defending him?" Every word out of my mouth felt like a trap. I forced my expression neutral. "I'm saying we need proof before we drag him out in cuffs." "Then find it," Daniels snapped. "Or we'll do it without you." That night, I returned to Adrian, my mind in chaos. He was waiting by the church steps, lantern in hand, like a shadow carved from the darkness. "They want you," I said flatly. "They're coming." He didn't flinch. "And what do you want, Ethan?" I hated the question, hated the way it stripped me bare. "I want the truth." His eyes softened, sorrow and affection tangled in his gaze. "Then stay with me tonight. One night. If by dawn you still see a monster, you can hand me over." It was madness. It was betrayal. It was everything my oath as an agent told me not to do. And yet, I stayed. The hours stretched into eternity. We sat in silence, his shoulder brushing mine as the firelight flickered between us. At some point, he reached for my hand. At some point, I didn't pull away. When his lips met mine again, it was fiercer than before, a collision of need and desperation. I tasted the storm, the danger, the impossible weight of everything pressing down on us, and I let myself drown. For once, there was no bureau, no case, no world outside, just two men caught between ruin and salvation. But dawn comes whether you're ready or not. I woke to the sound of engines, black SUVs pulling up outside the valley. The bureau had arrived in force. Adrian stood by the window, his expression unreadable. "It's time." My chest constricted. "Don't fight them, please." His gaze found mine, burning with something I couldn't name. "I won't. But remember this, Ethan. No matter what they say, no matter what happens, I was yours. If only for a moment." And with that, he walked out to meet his fate. The bureau descended like wolves. Guns raised, orders barked, followers dragged out in confusion and fear. Adrian stood calmly in the center, hands lifted in surrender, his white clothes glowing in the morning sun. Agent Daniels cuffed him, his voice sharp. "Adrian Hale, you are under arrest." And all I could do was stand there, torn in two, my heart screaming while my badge kept me silent. Because for the first time in my career, I didn't know if I just saved the world or destroyed the only thing that had ever truly mattered to me. The cell they put Adrian in was too small for a man who carried the weight of so many souls. Concrete walls, a steel bench bolted to the floor, no windows. The bureau stripped him of his flowing white clothes, dressed him in the dull orange of a prisoner, and locked him away like he was nothing but a criminal. I stood behind the one-way glass, my chest heavy with every breath. I should have felt vindicated. I should have felt relief. This was what I was trained for, what I'd sworn to do. Instead, I felt hollow. He sat calmly, hands resting on his knees, eyes closed as though meditating. He didn't fight. He didn't rage. He simply waited. "Cole!" Agent Daniels barked behind me. "You're up. Let's see if he opens that silver tongue of his for you." I straightened, hiding the turmoil inside. "Yes, sir." The door clanged shut behind me as I entered the cell. For a long moment, Adrian didn't move. Then, slowly, his eyes opened, locking onto mine. "You came," he said softly, like it was the most natural thing in the world. I swallowed hard. "I'm your interrogator, Adrian. That's why I'm here." A ghost of a smile curved his lips. "No, you're here because you couldn't stay away." My fists clenched at my sides. "Stop playing games. There's a body. There are missing people. You need to give me something before they tear this place apart." Adrian tilted his head, studying me. "Do you trust me, Ethan?" It was the one question I couldn't answer. Not honestly. "Tell me what happened." I pressed, my voice harsher than I intended. "Tell me who that man in the woods was." His expression shifted, sorrow flickering across his face. "He was one of us, but he chose a darker path. Drugs, violence. He left and I couldn't follow. He died alone, not because of me, but because the world outside is crueler than anything within these walls." I stared at him, my gut twisting. His words rang true, and yet truth wasn't evidence. Over the next days, the bureau interrogated him endlessly. Daniels slammed fists on tables. Others threatened, mocked, accused. But Adrian never broke. He answered with calm, with silence, or with cryptic fragments that only made the Bureau angrier. And then, when no one else could get through, they sent me back in. Every time I stepped into that cell, the air shifted. He looked at me not as his captor, not as his judge, but as if I were the only tether he had left. "Do you ever wonder," he asked one night when I brought him his food, "what it would feel like to stop being an agent? To stop carrying everyone else's sins and just live?" His words slid under my skin, dangerous and tempting. "That's not an option for me." "It could be," he whispered, eyes burning into mine. I turned away before I betrayed myself. The breaking point came during a briefing. Daniels laid photographs across the table. The corpse in the woods, the list of missing people, notes from journalists already spinning the story into hysteria. "This is bigger than you, Cole," Daniels snapped. "The Bureau needs a win. Hale is the perfect target. We nail him. The media calms down. The public breathes easier." I felt the blood drain from my face. "You don't care if he's guilty. You just want someone to blame." Daniel's glare cut through me. "Careful, agent. Unless you want to share his cell." I walked out before I said something I couldn't take back. That night, I sat alone in my motel room, staring at the rain streaking down the window. My badge lay on the table, glinting in the dim light. For the first time in my career, it felt like a shackle instead of a shield. I thought of Adrian. His steady gaze, the warmth in his voice when he said my name, the quiet strength that made people follow him. Was I blind? Or was the Bureau willfully ignoring the possibility that he wasn't the monster they wanted him to be? A knock at my door jolted me. I opened it to find one of Adrian's followers, a young woman with fear in her eyes. She pressed a journal into my hands. "He told me to give you this," she whispered. "He said you'd know what to do." Before I could ask more, she vanished into the rain. I shut the door and opened the journal. The handwriting was Adrian's. Inside were pages of notes, details of every person who had come to the valley, where they had gone, the choices they made. He'd documented it all. And in the margins I saw my own name. Ethan Cole. Strong. Guarded. But kind. He carries more weight than he should. If he ever lets go, he will soar. My throat tightened. This wasn't evidence of guilt. It was evidence of love. The next day, I returned to the Bureau's headquarters with the journal hidden beneath my jacket. I told myself I'd hand it in, that it was my duty. But as I stood in front of Daniel's office, my body froze. If I gave this to them, they'd twist it. They'd call it manipulation, proof of brainwashing. They'd bury Adrian under lies until no truth could reach him. Instead, I slipped the journal back into my coat and walked away. That evening, I went back to Adrian's cell. He looked up as I entered, a faint smile curving his lips. "You found it," he said, as if he already knew. "Yes," I whispered. My chest felt like it was caving in. "Why me? Why write about me?" His voice was quiet, steady. "Because you're the only one who ever looked at me and saw more than a leader, more than a sinner. You saw me." The silence between us was charged, heavy with all the words we couldn't say. Then slowly I stepped forward. My hand brushed his through the bars. His fingers curled around mine, warm and certain. "I don't know how to save you," I admitted, my voice breaking. "Then let me save you," he whispered back. But saving us both would mean tearing down everything I'd built. The Bureau wasn't done with him. They wanted a trial, a spectacle, a conviction. The media wanted a villain. The town wanted closure. And me? I wanted the impossible. I wanted Adrian Hale to be free. I wanted to be free with him. And the only way forward would mean betraying everything I'd ever sworn to uphold. The air in the compound felt different after that night of fire and blood. For weeks, the world outside spun stories about the cult, the violence, the hidden archives, and the supposed miracles that never existed. News vans camped outside the perimeter. Politicians bickered on live television about who was responsible for the mess. Survivors were scattered across shelters, wondering if they would ever feel whole again. And in the middle of it all, there was me, a detective who had come here looking for answers, evidence, closure. But I had walked out with something I never could have predicted. Something, or rather someone, that tethered me to a new kind of truth. Damien. He sat across from me in the safe house kitchen, sunlight breaking through the blinds and casting faint golden lines across his face. His eyes, once cold, burning with the pressure of leadership, now softened when they met mine. The weight of his past was still there, coiled like a shadow in the corners of the room, but it no longer ruled him. He looked human, fallible, and mine. "You're still staring," Damien said, lifting his mug to his lips. His voice carried that teasing lilt I'd grown addicted to. I smirked, leaning back in my chair. "Get used to it. I think I've earned the right." "You think surviving me earns you privileges?" He raised an eyebrow, setting the mug down with deliberate calm. "Detective, I was supposed to break you, not." His words faltered, as if the thought itself was too fragile to say aloud. "Not fall for me?" I finished, my tone softer now. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked out the window, where the world stretched wide and open. A world he wasn't sure he belonged in anymore. His fingers tightened around the handle of the mug, and for a moment, I thought he might retreat back into silence, that familiar fortress he built around himself. But then, with a breath that trembled just slightly, he said, "Not let you save me." The words hung between us. I felt them settle into my chest, heavy and warm, like the final piece of a puzzle I hadn't known I was working on. I pushed back my chair and stood, crossing the room slowly until I was beside him. His body tensed when I placed my hand on his shoulder, but he didn't move away. His eyes lifted, meeting mine with a rawness that stripped him bare. "Damien," I said, my voice steady, "you were never mine to fix. You chose to change."
You chose me.
His throat worked, and for the first time in all the months I'd known him, I saw something fragile in him. Fear, hope, longing, all tangled together. And then he whispered, "I don't know how to be loved." It hit me harder than any confession of guilt, any crime he could have admitted, because it was the one truth that explained everything. The walls, the manipulation, the power. He had built a kingdom not out of faith, but out of loneliness. So I leaned down, pressing my forehead to his. "Then let me teach you." His breath hitched. For a long moment we stayed there, the world outside falling away. No cult, no investigations, no scars, just us. And when he finally kissed me, tentative at first, then desperate, hungry, alive, I knew this was the ending I had been chasing all along. Not justice, not closure, but love. The investigation eventually wrapped. Reports were filed, evidence catalogued, names released to the press. People wanted a villain, someone to crucify in headlines and debates. Damien fit the role too perfectly. But I fought for him. I testified. I handed over every piece of proof that showed he had dismantled his own cult from the inside, that he had chosen to protect instead of destroy. The jury didn't know what to make of it. To them, he was both a monster and a savior. And somehow, in a twist of fate I still couldn't believe, they gave him a chance. Community service, therapy, restrictions, yes, but freedom nonetheless. A narrow path to redemption. When the gavel struck and Damien looked over at me with stunned disbelief, I gave him the smallest nod. This was only the beginning. Months later, We stood on a pier overlooking the Pacific Ocean. The sun was sinking low, spilling color across the waves, and the salt air tangled in Damien's hair. He leaned against the railing, his profile bathed in light, and for the first time he looked free. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked suddenly. I tilted my head. "Regret what?" "Us. What it cost you." His gaze flicked to me, sharp but unsure. "You nearly lost your career, your life, everything." I stepped closer, brushing my fingers against his. "Damien, you don't get it. I didn't lose anything. I found you." His lips parted, and for a second he looked like he might argue. But then, his hand closed around mine, steady and warm. We stayed like that, watching the horizon. Two men scarred by the past, bound by something stronger than fear. Two men who had walked through fire and come out holding on to each other. And as the waves crashed against the pier below, I realized this was the ending I wanted. Not perfect, not easy, but real. Because sometimes love doesn't save you, it remakes you. Years later, when people asked how it all began, I never mentioned the case or the cult or the headlines that screamed his name. I only said this: I went looking for the truth, and I found him. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.